being a member of the media myself, I can say that over the years, we've always heard these types of complaints about the RCIPS, but I have to honestly say that I have noticed that they have been becoming more transparent in investigating their own officers in certain types of cases and so forth. So, I'm gonna defend them to a certain extent here. But on the other hand, let's talk a little bit about what you're wanting to do.
Sure. And Donna, let me try to remove two things from this. One is the whole issue of personalities, because whenever you start chatting about something, whether it's the Complaint Commissioner's Office or you talk about the Royal Cayman Islands Police, we tend to start attaching faces, and it tends to create an emotive situation, and I don't want that. So I think there's sort of a macro position is one of, I believe that the instruments of the United Kingdom should be no different to be our instruments that we consider to be our own in the Cayman Islands. In other words, the Treasurer, which we might take remit over that as Caymanians, that's the Treasury Department, is subject to the Complaints Commissioner's Office in terms of review on behalf of the general public to see if there's any maladministration. And by maladministration, has there been any sort of bad management decisions, etc., that are being made? We accept that the government departments are subject to that.
Right.
So then we have to ask ourselves, why then is the Royal Cayman Islands Police Force not subject to that?
Okay.
And I think if you start to look at it, what you'll find is that all of the things that tends to fall upon the United Kingdom, well, no one dare question us. Let's not have transparency when it comes to what the governor has. For example, we've had discussions where we can say the Premier has a security guard now. We can bash that up. We can bash what he's driving. But no one talks about what the governor drives. No one talks again about how many social secretaries he has, how many chefs he has, the fact that he lives in 7 Mile Beach, and all that is done at the taxpayer's expense.
Okay.
And so this is not about a personality, but this is about creating on a macro level the fairness and equity of transparency and investigations for all government departments, and letting no one escape through some little corner or some little hole they want to put themselves in. But in addition to that, on a more micro level, I have received numerous complaints, and I know that these complaints have been going on for decades, but I'm not here to complain about what politicians of the past have failed to do. I am going to stand up and do what I believe I have to do. I believe there's an expiration date on my neck unless the people choose to renew it with a different stamp. And until then, I'm going to do what I believe is right for the people of this country. And there are persons who come to me outside and inside the Royal Cayman Islands Police Force that say, listen, there are serious problems in there.
Okay.
In terms of promotions, disciplining of staff, and a host of other myriad of other plagues and horror stories that you hear. So I'm not going to take a side, but what I'm going to say is, let's give fairness then allow the Complaints Commissioner to go in there and see if there's maladministration. So I expect to get the full support of my government bench and the opposition bench, because there is a problem, and let's allow the Complaints Commissioner to go in there and do it. There are some persons who are going to view the Complaints Commissioner's law, and their interpretation may be that he or she, that office, has the ability to do it. I can tell you pretty much from conversation that the two consecutive persons who have been there are both persons learned in the law. In fact, the lady who's there now, Ms. Williams, is a very learned person, a judge, very intelligent lady, and one who wants, as I understand and can interpret from her, wants to be able to do her job and do it properly. It's an office right now with the highest of integrity, and we want to be able to sustain that. We also want to be able to continue to give them the independence that they need, and also give them the power that they need to be able to conduct these investigations. And with the greatest of respect to any holder of the office, I do not believe the Royal Cayman Islands Police, with the Commissioner Baines or any other commissioner now or in the future, and I don't believe His Excellency the Governor, regardless of who holds office, should be above the taxpayers of this country who pay their salaries, and at the end of the day, they are subject in terms of transparency, and they are subject if they have done something wrong in terms of maladministration.
All right, Mr. Solomon, I thank you for clarifying that and making your point clear to our listeners out there. If you weren't before, you just heard the facts of the idea that's behind Mr. Solomon's thinking about the RCIPS or any government department and who may need to be looked at or reviewed by the Complaints Commissioner. One of the other things that one of the callers was talking about and wanted you to address a little bit more was the certain jobs for Caymanians only. Do you want to talk a little bit more about that? I think I had asked you whether it was, condensed to any particular industries or so forth. So can we talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, and again, I know he touched on the issue of the legislation and when that was coming forward. So I'll end with that. And let me just say, on looking at this this in a broad perspective. A good circumspect view is, what is the golden rule? The golden rule is the person who actually makes the rules is the one who's running the country. And I've given the example to individuals on a one-to-one discussion, so I don't see no problem doing so here. If you have a company, because there are those Caymanians who are concerned about the issue of immigration, this is one of the things I raised. And quite naturally so, they're concerned, well, if they have thousands of people here, what about me? I need a job, and the long list goes on. If you have a company, and you have a family, let's make that the mom, the dad, 4 children, as an example, and those are the owners of that particular company.
Right.
You can have another 4, or another 40, or 400 people working for that company. Those 4 persons, because of their position in terms of making the policy and the decisions in that company, retain ownership. Right. So they are therefore not threatened by the 400 persons who are working for their company. So if you're not threatened as a person who owns a company, and you're only one person, you have 400 people working for you, why do I have that concern when it comes to immigration in your country? Because I think the indigenous population recognizes they are not always the ones who are calling the shots. They are not the ones who are making decisions. And so I believe as much as possible on that level, you need to be able to work to make sure that there are key positions in this country that are going to be making some determined, some very important decisions on behalf of this country. And I believe in the majority of cases what we're going to find, if not all of them, is that part and parcel of that has to be that our own people are holding those positions. And that is whether there may be jobs that somebody may actually be considering to be low on the pole or high on the pole or somewhere in the middle. And so those key positions is not something that I want to extrapolate or expound upon here, because I don't believe it should be Ellio Anthony Solomon to decide that. I think there needs to be a good committee put together that's going to make their recommendations to the Cabinet, be it now or in the future, and Cabinet make their judicious decision and decide what those key positions should be. But what I do want history to record is that I brought forward a motion, and that hopefully to end now on terms of the legislation, that just speaking with the minister responsible, which the legislation has to come through his portfolio, that we should have this legislation in place, come into the House to be debated sometime in the November sitting. And I wanted to be recorded that at the end of the day, I worked hard to be able to create that schedule whereby the decision can be made if there are positions in this country that should be determined as jobs for Caymanians only, that it can be done. If we as a people decide that there are no such jobs, then that is the decision for the people of the country. But at least let us empower ourselves by creating the schedule where those particular tasks, we have the ability to do that if we think that is necessary. I believe we have already made that decision, because somewhere someone decided that your elected officials should be Caymanians. And that it shouldn't be someone from Botswana or wherever else. And I think that was a judicious decision. I think someone also decided that the deputy governor should be a Caymanian, and I believe that there are other positions similar to that in the civil service and in the private sector that deserves that same sort of careful scrutiny.
Well, I remember in the past, and certainly not on a much larger scale than what you're talking about, the Bahamas, for instance. I believe it was Pingling, the leader at the time, said that he wanted all mid and higher management jobs for Bahamians. And many Bahamians, made big noises about it and said, this can't happen, whatever. Now, generations later, you find Bahamians are in top and mid-management throughout the country. I mean, it's like nothing that's ever been seen before, particularly in our region. So, like I said, maybe you're not talking about things on that scale or on that level, but certainly. And
let me just say, because I know my colleague, I believe, wants to chime in on it as well, and just that I'm always obviously reluctant to have it likened and compared to everyone else or anyone else. But let me just say that, I think there are pros and cons in terms of what other administrations would have done regardless. And in this particular case, not asking for anything broad sweeping or arguably that someone would say is radical, but I believe if anything we can agree that just as it has been done judiciously in the past, that there are certain key positions, in example elected officials and the deputy governor, that they should be for Caymanians. I think most of us would be able to sit together with cool heads and with consensus say, why not the chief immigration officer? Why not the other certain key positions within the government? And surely if we can see that, then the mirror reflection of that is there has to be certain key positions, similar in the private sector, that we want to get our people skilled up if necessary, get them into those jobs and be able to retain those positions as something that we call jobs for Caymanians only.
All right, Mr. Seymour, please go ahead.
No, it's so funny that you mentioned the Bahamas situation. I met someone yesterday, and that was the first thing they brought up about
Really?
Let's do what the Bahamas did.
Okay.
I was like, oh boy. And, that was quite interesting what the Bahamas did. They saw they had a problem. They had a vision for where they wanted to get, and they decided. No one knows how many steps that the Bahamas took before they realized that they had to take that step.
Right.
But what I'm saying is when Ellio brought the motion in terms of job security or restricted areas of employment is what it would be called. I again was excited about this bill. It was something directly for our people. I didn't want it to seem like we were protection agents in terms of just protecting jobs for Caymanians,
Right.
We definitely have 2,000 people thereabout unemployed. One of my things is that we need to find out more about our unemployed. We needed a better registration. And we needed to audit our unemployed and provide training. Training has to be the paramount area of concern for unemployed or being retooled.
Right.
And the reason I said that is because a lot of these jobs that we're talking about trying to protect for Caymanians, we need to understand what they are and then appreciate that we have the complement to be able to fill those posts.
Right.
And
right.
that in that vein, we definitely need to know what they are, train up our Caymanians. So it's not going to be something just overnight.
No, it takes some time.
It'll take time. So if we go ahead, dissect our population, our unemployed population, find out who can be trained here, who are interested in different areas, whether it's mutual funds or whatever else it is, and we go ahead and set these programs up. We don't set them up by ourselves as a government. We involve the private sector. Let them build a program that that is acceptable to them, and then they know once a person goes through that program and is a stellar in that program, then that is someone that is acceptable that will be employed with them.
Right.
So once we have gone that far in training our population the best that we could, and anyone who wanted to take advantage of it, then if we see then that there's further resistance in terms of employing our Caymanians, and then it's not about them not being prepared or being trained.
Right. There has to be another excuse.
Then there's another excuse. So then that will be another step.
Right.
So before we even talk about scaring people about the Bahamas effect,
right?
And we just remember, I think the Bahamas thing was probably done in the 70s, eh?
Yeah.
And I think Lyndon Pinland's middle name is Dwayne. I do think so. But so we're living in an age now of when one country can shut you down by just sending out one email. So we have to be cognizant of that also.
Sure. Okay. Let's talk about the UDP's housing initiatives, because that's a big thing that has helped our economy, a big thing that that's keeping us, without a lot of major construction projects. You still have a lot of, all over the island, homes are being built and rebuilt for homeowners, new homeowners, as well as it's given our construction workers work. And this has been one of the things that the UDP based its manifesto on as well, and I believe it's been one of the successful areas as well. So can we talk a little bit about that? We have about 15 minutes to wrap up here on Talk with the Nation, so we're going to end up with talking about one of the success areas here.
No, definitely try to keep it succinct, and then you can always fill it up with any additional questions you may have. But the housing issue, I think, is very important. Again, it's very easy for us to be able to find some of us, let's call middle class individuals, and say it's relatively easy to be able to go to a bank and to secure a mortgage. And so we find that getting a home, whether it's $225,000, $250,000, or somewhat reasonable above, maybe up to $400,000 or $500,000, that is not necessarily out of our range. But understand that there is a large bracket of persons on one side of the bell curve or another that find themselves in a very difficult position in terms of actually purchasing a home.
Right.
So there are categories of persons who, one, find it very difficult securing a mortgage. There are those who find it impossible to get a mortgage, and there are even those persons who find it impossible to pay rent. And somewhere or another, you have to be able to work to find some solution for it. Because the person who can afford it will find that if they fail to do something, if they fail to be compassionate and look out for those persons, then they themselves may eventually not own a home.
Okay.
If you catch my drift on that one.
Yeah.
So housing has always been something very, very important to me. I think it has to be something that's addressed holistically as well. There has to be some legislative changes, some policy decisions that have to be made. And then there's that sort of brick and mortar construction as well, in terms of being able to actually make that affordable. We know that there had been affordable homes that have been constructed in the past, and it's not to knock in any way at all those efforts, but I believe that those homes, from a Cayman perspective, was not sufficient enough. It's not the sort of the category of homes that we wanted. We want a certain quality of homes, and I think that we have been able to achieve that. In terms of the elections, for example, 2009, I made an issue at several of our public meetings, if not all of them, that at the time there had been at least 775 applications that sat on the desk of the previous administration, and no affordable homes had been constructed.
Wow.
Absolutely none. And again, I want to stress that whether it's the pensions we're talking about, or whether it's those individuals, you're not talking about 775 individuals. You're talking about 775 families. And the average family, I think, in the Cayman Islands is somewhere in the region of 2.2 persons. Now, whatever that actually comes out to be. But that is a large number of persons that in your community that do not have access to a home. And you can go down the studies that prove that if a person doesn't actually have a home, it changes the whole dynamics and makeup. Maslow's little pyramid actually says to you that the fundamentals are water, food, and shelter. And clearly we know what happens if you deny someone water. You can't go without water for arguably more than 5 or 7 days. They say can't go without food for more than 21. They assume somewhere around there. And with housing, you can stretch a little bit longer, but it causes the same sort of problem.
Right.
So water, food, shelter, very, very critical. So we wanted to take a step in the right direction in terms of saying what can we do to provide the right quality homes, and at the same time, the persons who actually recall in terms of us taking office right there in 2009 would also add into that equation the fact that there was a serious downturn in the economy. Persons were unemployed. So right away I asked in terms of trying to see if we could get those affordable homes constructed. We started off with 12 homes in East End. We went on from there to construct 29 in the District of West Bay. We have just recently constructed 26 in Georgetown, and now working for 20 in Bordentown. And there have also been some homes in Cayman Brac, the sister islands. And in addition to that, hopefully being able to do some in Northside if everything goes well before the end of this term as well. And it's very, very important to understand that not only are we working and taking the steps in the right direction in terms of providing those homes for Caymanians, but in addition to that, we were actually able, in the first time in the history of this country that I am aware of, I think that I'm quite proud to say, all of those homes being constructed by local contractors, because you continue to hear government projects where Caymanians were going to get work, and a lot of times they didn't get work. Wow. Even with the schools under the previous administration, they were a case where even down to the photocopying of paper, of prints, went off to Chicago, despite the fact that you're talking about perhaps spending $100 million for a school. In this particular case, you're talking about building affordable homes, all local contractors. So even the construction of the 26 homes in Georgetown, I think there were somewhere in the region of about 19 local contractors that got work on those 26 homes. Okay. All of the materials that were purchased, the steel, the blocks, the wood, everything was purchased locally. Again, working to make sure that we could stimulate the economy. Even, for example, if you looked under the previous administration with respect to the schools, not only were they outsourcing photocopying, it was also a case that even with respect to materials, they had given themselves concessions. So materials would have been able to be brought in from foreign countries without necessarily having to pay concessions. And again, we can appreciate the ripple effect of that. So one, we're talking about working. And yes, 775 are the now 1,000 plus persons who need affordable homes. That's not a number that is going to be easily addressed. Right. I can say to you that if I had the $100 million that we're going to spend on one school, I could do a lot more than I could do with 12 million. Right. But a journey of 1,000 miles begins with the first step, Donna, and I'm very proud to be able to say here today that just during my term, I know that I have played an instrumental role in making sure that 87 families so far are going to be able to move into a home. And I've done that with the support of my government. And in addition to that, we're going to continue to plug away, build homes until we get the 775 or until we get the 1,026 that now exist. And we have to make sure that we're also making preparations for the future, making legislative changes that works with the banks to be able to help facilitate them. We had one lender calling today. What can we do to help facilitate them in terms of lending money to some of those persons right now who may not be able to qualify? Is it additional security? Is it things like the pensions? We need to be able to look at this holistically and try to find solutions to be able to put families into homes, Donna. When you and I go to sleep tonight, understand. I walked just the other morning. This must have been about 5:30. And you get to a particular area in the middle of Georgetown, and you look down, and there's something I'm seeing under the on the side by the ocean, and there's someone sleeping. And actually, because they were so tucked away, it looked like one of their legs were missing. There is a human being with life and blood
in Cayman.
Right, in the Cayman Islands, sleeping in graveyards, sleeping under a piece of stone somewhere.
Unacceptable.
Right, and we have to do something about that. And where I can't fix all those problems, once fell swoop, I'm definitely doing my part, by the grace of God, to see if we can get one at a time, one family at a time, into their own affordable home.
Okay, and hopefully you and the UDP government will be able to continue
Absolutely.
what you've started, and in the coming months ahead, and of course in the coming years. Mr. Seymour, talk a little bit about some of the things that you've been doing as we're in our last 10 minutes here on the show. We're going to take one more break. Let's do that now, and then when we come back, Mr. Seymour can wrap up things for us.
Talk with the Nation with host Donna Bush on Vibe FM.
Welcome back to the show. We're in our last few minutes here of Talk with the Nation this Wednesday evening here on Vibe 98.9. We're going to go over to our MLA from Bordentown, Mr. Dwayne Seymour, to talk about, wrap up and tell us a little bit about some of the things that they're planning on doing or that they've been doing in the district of Bordentown, him and his colleague, Mr. Scotland, as well as the UDP government.
Yeah, Donna, thank you. And definitely, sometimes you hear that on the radio, people saying, "Oh, what have they done? What have they done?" And there's a lot of things that we have done. Not all the time we come out and say some of the stuff that we've done, but some of the stuff we were working on in Bordentown, actually, you know, one of the things we got the minister to do was to expand the primary schools and to include the early childhood learning in the Savannah School and the Bordentown Primary School. So definitely we're assisting, you know, with Bordentown Primary School's after school programs. We've just added karate, and we've added dance. So we got Creed Learning Center helping with dance now, at least 2 days a week up there. And we're working on a music program right now also. That we're working with a resident in Bordentown. And at the Savannah Primary, as you see it, we have a 200-meter track, and it's something that is probably underutilized right now. It's just been built. But, you know, the principal at Savannah Primary said he's worked all over the world, and he has never seen a primary school with its own track, you know, and he just applauds that. It just blows him wild. Definitely, I just spoke about some of the things we're doing with the parks. We're right now developing 3 at one time, and we hope to develop at least 4 more before our term ends next year, and election is here again. So definitely, we know what parks can do, the enhancement of the area, the quality of life that it brings. As we're on here now speaking, I just received some photos from some of the parks in Savannah that are now being used. They're not even finished yet, but they're kids playing basketball, and there's children sliding on the slides. So we got to be proud about that, and that provided some employment for local Bordentowners also, because that was one of the things we stressed, that we wanted Bordentown contractors to do the work. Bordentown persons who owned plant nurseries, etc., those would be the persons who would get first opportunity for Bordentown to do these Bordentown parks. So
right.
Definitely that's how we went about that. Definitely we're working on trying to get 2 hotels in Bordentown area, as we say. One of my goals before I end my political career is to have Bordentown such a place that even if you work in Georgetown, you're dying to get home, because it's such an exciting place to live. Yeah. And that's what Bordentown has been lacking for many years. I mean, I can go on record and saying, in 3 years, what I've done is more than many politicians have done in 40 years. And, we got to be proud of that.
Right.
And we're working on having the economic zone up there, which will create more employment again for Bordentowners. We're working right now in the housing repair program. Some people haven't been called yet, but they're working their way trying to get through this. It's a lot of people that applied, so just be patient with us. We got the Coalwood Beach project that we got going on over there. A gentleman said to me the other day, he says, 40 years now I've been waiting on a boat ramp up at Bordentown. He says, man, you guys don't know what you did. So we're working on that right now, trying to finalize that so we can finally open it. We had some little problems there with the heritage huts in terms of planning. We're hopeful that we'll get the red card this week. We got the barbecue pits out there. People can still go out there under the huts and enjoy the beauty of it. We got the affordable housing that we got going on in Pease Bay.
Right.
That's going to start soon. We're hoping to get the red card on that this week also. Trying to get Bordentown contractors in there as persons who will be building those homes. And I thank Ellio Solomon and Honourable Minister Adam and Mark Scotland for all their support.
Right.
Definitely, there's been some concerns in terms of about the arrangements in terms of how people would be able to get one of these homes, whether it would be leased or whether they would own it. We've heard the concerns, and we went back to the drawing board, and now the board is looking at new ways to offer options to people so that they have a choice.
Right.
Because what we're trying to do is not say, here's what we have for you, the government's prepared for you, but we say, here's a stepping stone.
Right.
Where you can use this to get to where you want to get in terms of being a house owner on your own accord.
Right. And it's different
with
things
your own
different
financial independence.
Work for different people.
Right. So as we go along, there's a big project that we haven't even really announced yet. It's a project we're working on for Bordentown right now. It's a 25-meter swimming pool, and it's a boxing gym. Just like the size of the one in Georgetown, which will also have a room upstairs that persons can use to have meetings for their sport teams, whatever. And definitely, I have the drawings done already. Public Works has already done all the drawings. They've done the costs and everything.
Right.
The schematics, everything is done on it. So I have that, and I drive around with that actually. And it's a dream waiting to come true. I know,
and it's certainly something that can be utilized by not only Bordentowners but Eastenders, Northsiders.
This will be a big benefit for the Eastern districts. And I wish I had more time to talk about that, but that's
another show.
That's another show in itself.
Okay.
But other things I've been working on. The Youth Parliament. It's the first time the Youth Parliament has ever been done in the Cayman Islands, back to back under my chairmanship.
That's wonderful.
So I'm very proud about that, and we're going now for a triple. The Triple Crown. So that's exciting for next year, and we're gonna do some very exciting things with that. Never
budding
seen
politicians
before.
there.
Yeah, exactly, and we need to encourage that.
Yeah.
So I'm on the PAC committee. That's something that keeps me busy, and the Commonwealth Parliamentary team also, the House Committee chair. That's some of the stuff we're doing also. So I've been bringing some bills, in terms of in conjunction with Ellio Solomon, and also some stuff in terms of trying to get young lawyers who are graduating and not having a place to article. I'm trying to bring laws so that they can try to get some articling done at the LA, so that will form part of their credits.
Wonderful.
While they're waiting for places that they can article, they're having such a hard time.
Right.
We're trying to bring an antitrust law that's already been filed. I also brought a bill to reorganize the legal aid system in the Cayman Islands.
Okay.
And also the pension usage, like he mentioned. I just want to take the opportunity to say congratulations to Charles Whitaker for his display on Friday. I felt so proud to be a Caymanian. And I told those guys when I was sitting there watching, I says, look, if I was a promoter, I would say, that man, I want him on my undercard.
Yeah.
So he made us proud. I just want to say that we're also working on a cemetery for Bordentown because it's quite full. It's capacity.
Right.
So that's one of the things we're working on also. And we're in austere times when there's no money, and we need to find creative ways to get these things done. I also want to say that on Saturday there's a coconut festival. Right to know Caymanian traditions, music, educational exhibits, children's play area, food tastings. Interactive experiences for kids and everything. It's at the Market of the Grounds on September 29th at Lower Valley. So you want to take your kids
fun
there.
Activity.
It's from 9 a.m. to 12 noon. So you want to take your kids there.
Coconut Fest. That sounds wonderful.
Donna, all in all, it hasn't been a great time to be elected in the Cayman Islands. It hasn't been a great time to be elected in the world.
But you're not as scared as you used to be.
No, but I'm thankful that I'm the one that is here to be able to try to turn the Cayman Islands around in terms of its financial stability.
Right.
And that's one of the things that why I ran with this party.
Yeah.
Was because of Mr. Bush's
vision.
His vision in terms of always trying to leave a reserve, and his prudence. In terms of handling the country's finance and only spending what you make.
Right.
And that wasn't something that the past government cared about.
Right.
So that's the reason why I ran with the UDP. I'm quite happy right now. There's new things that needs to be done. There's new blood that needs to come in. But there are things we need to work on. But I thank you for having me on this show. And God bless the people of the Cayman Islands, and especially Bordentown.
All right. Well, if I might share something with you quickly, with our listeners out there, and you two gentlemen, quickly before we go, and I have Mr. Solomon say his final words. I had someone come up to me the other day, and we were talking about politics, and they said to me, I would vote for somebody who has a business and has a successful business, because if they're going to run a successful business, chances are they're going to run a successful country. I thought that was very interesting.
Very interesting.
Yeah. Mr. Solomon, any final words?
I'm sure Dwayne can make contribution there as well. But it's probably another show. No. I suppose, Donna, just in closing, just to touch again very quickly on a cursory review in terms of some of the things that I did, and then definitely to say some complimentary things, hopefully, on behalf of the party generally. I have brought quite a few motions, and just listening them out, we talked about some of them today, things like the human organ and tissue transplant, the pension withdrawal amendment for the private sector, the jobs for Caymanians only, which may get a slightly different name change in terms of restricted jobs. Pension withdrawal amendment now for the civil service. When I heard Dwayne commenting earlier on in terms of the need to upskill our people, one of the things that I'm bringing as well is the education fund, looking to be able to take a percentage of the work permit fees and have that directly put into to fund education.
Right.
And I think that proportionality is very important as well. As we chatted about earlier on, is the issue about the complaints commissioner being able to get access in terms of investigation, whether on their own motion or whether through complaints from someone else in this force or outside the general public, to be able to launch investigations on areas of maladministration. I've also had the privilege to be able to involved in several different projects, things like the island-wide pride cleanup, again employing 800 persons throughout the island. We've done that on numerous occasions. Things like constructing the affordable homes. Again, we have quite proudly can say between East End, West Bay, Georgetown and Bordentown, somewhere in the region of 8 to 7 homes now, and hope to move to Northside after that. I've also been chairman of the e-government advisory board, and of course we have about 3 projects that we have completed right now, and it kind of culminates into one, but it's actually 3 separate projects that I hope will be talking about in this program very soon.
Okay.
One of those things, for example, some serious revamping in terms of technology with respect to vehicle licensing, which is going to be a good discussion. I've also been involved with things at the Georgetown Port, working again to see if we can get check in terms of a $300 million project, which I think will put a lot of money into the economy and provide much opportunities that our people need, particularly at this time. I've also had the opportunity to work on things like the Public Accounts Committee with my colleagues, also chairman of the Register of Interest Committee, and a host of other things, Donna. And I'd like to just say that I'm quite proud at this point in time to actually be a member of Parliament and to be given the opportunity to represent the people of this country. You can do as much as you like, but you always perhaps feel like there's always something more that you can do, and that's perhaps why I'm waking up at 1:30 in the morning. But anyone who has any sort of questions or comments, I'd like to encourage them to give me a call, even if it's those persons who want to run.
Sure.
I did have quite a bit of a number change because I have temporary issue in terms of one of my phones. I have to get a new one, but my temporary number, which is a government number, is 925-56804. Again, for any persons who may actually want to get in touch with me, that's 925-56804. But Nona, let me say, in echoing what my colleague has mentioned, naturally getting elected in 2009 has had its share of challenges. We faced, in terms of our election, a very serious downturn in the economy, perhaps arguably the highest unemployment that the country has ever seen. Serious challenges, both internal from opposition, who says that they're going to launch the largest campaign the country has ever seen, and they have done so. And in my opinion, they have done a very destructive campaign so far, but by the grace of God, they have failed. And also, you've had a campaign, as far as I'm concerned, from external forces, even from the mother country, that have sought to use this financial situation to gain what they felt they could gain on behalf of the UK. I give you one quick example. When the United Kingdom is going to say to us that we'll pass your budget if you put this into law, that shouldn't be the deal. It should be a case that the budget's good or it's not good.
Right.
But either way, I am proud to be able to say it. I'm a member right now with the government, and I have a very good team that works along with me, and I wouldn't have asked for anything different. We hope to be able to be there in 2013, hopefully with some additional members as well, and hopefully be given a chance to be able to serve the people of this country. I think that our biggest accomplishment right away was the fact that this government was able to prevent this. Yeah, sorry, I was just reading something. I think at the end of the day, one of the things that we were able to accomplish right away was to simply be able to make sure that we could get the Cayman Islands sustained in a position where we weren't going to lose our Moody rating, while even America, a big financial power, was actually having their rating downgraded. The Cayman Islands was able to sustain there. It wasn't a situation where we ended up having to implement the taxes, even though it seemed like we bordered on that. I think those in itself were great accomplishments. Now we need to get the projects off the road, get more and more people employed. But I think the country right now finds itself in a good state. And I think if we can stay on this course, I think we're going to be very much a great country, the greater Cayman that I've always been pushing for and praying for.
All right, Mr. Solomon, Mr. Seymour, we've certainly gone over our time this evening, but it has been a very hearty discussion, one that I hope to continue and Talk with the Nation here in the future, on another show at another time. Again, if you joined us this evening, we want to thank you for joining us on Talk with the Nation, a show that's presented here on Vibe 98.9 by the Honorable Premier of the Cayman Islands, Mr. McKeeva Bush. Join us every week on Wednesdays from 4:30 to 6:30 in the evenings here. Please call us with your comments and your questions at 946-9898. If you've missed this show or you want to listen to it again, you can do so tomorrow on youtube.com/talkwiththenation. That's youtube.com/talkwiththenation. This or the other 4 shows before it. All right, as always, thanks again. I'm Donna Bush here on Talk with the Nation. Continue to listen to the sounds here on Vibe 98.9.